Okay, everybody, we are live again for another IG series for Share Your Skills from Home in order to create a better world. So, we are about to interview Pedro Sostre. He's a three-time founder. And Pedro,
Hey, what's up?
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for your time. You want to share a little bit about who you are so the people at home know, or whoever's going to listen after?
Sure. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, and I just recently, in the last few years, started doing more support. And so right now, I'm building an incubator for early stage startups and helping them with everything from business modeling to financial forecasting to hopefully get them to the point where they can raise money.
Amazing, very cool. So just to frame us, try to frame it to everybody before you came in. So the idea of this interview is Pedro is actually volunteering for the interview as a part of our IG live series to share your skills from home to create a better world, right? And the whole idea is that not only Pedro is here to share with you guys a little bit of his talent, and the topic today is going to be the new normal for startup, but most important is to inspire each one of you guys to find your unique talent and to share it with the world. I think the world has never had so much need for each one of us to give back, to extend our hands, to help the world. And the idea of ShareNest, as you all know from now, that is a platform, okay, that makes volunteer easy, right? We are trying to create this movement of people doing good from home. So, Pedro, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being part of the interview. And so let's begin. So why does giving back matter to you?
Gosh, I think it's largely because I've been helped so many times by people that are giving their time to help me. I don't know, I can't imagine that I would have accomplished half of the things that I did if somebody didn't take the time to invest in me at different times in my life. So it's been really important that, or it's been really meaningful for me that people have invested their time in me. So anytime that I can do that for someone else, I try to make that effort.
That's amazing. And it's very similar somehow to our slogan, right? You get what you share, right? So giving back, I think there is a sense of, fulfillment, right? And also you were helped before and now you're feeling the responsibility of also giving back, and creating that circuitry that somehow I think it's so important in the startup world, right? Now, share a little bit with us anything that you see that entrepreneurs can get of help, like in the Miami realm, right? In the Miami startup environment or ecosystem.
Yeah, so it's not, I think as entrepreneurs, the fact that we decide to build something and create something usually means we have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder to begin with. Like a lot of times we think we know it all, and we think that, we don't need the help. But that, there's something to be said for the fact that you don't know what you don't know. So I learned in my first company that I sold, which happened a few years ago, there was so many mistakes that I made that I didn't even know I was making them because I didn't think I needed to ask for help. So the first thing is to kind of get over yourself and realize, you know what, like just by surrounding yourself with people that are doing really interesting things, you're going to get better, and you're going to realize things that you didn't know that you needed to know. And then second, there's a lot of organizations. If we're talking about here in Miami, in the Miami ecosystem, you've got Beacon Council, you've got 500 Startups, you've got WinLab, you've got Startup FIU, you've got Refresh Miami, you've got so many organizations that are helping to connect people. And it does take a little bit of work on your part to reach out and connect and to ask questions. But I got a message the other day on LinkedIn. It was a completely cold message. Somebody that said, he's in the middle of school and he's looking to graduate with business major and marketing, and he was looking for a mentor. And he was like, look, I see your background. I'd love to get some time with you. And so I said, sure, no problem. Then I said, the first thing I asked him when we got on a Zoom call is I was like, how many people did you send that same exact message to? And he was like a little bit embarrassed, and I was like, don't be embarrassed. Like, I'm curious, like what kind of hustle is behind there? And he was like, I probably sent that message to about between 20 and 25 people. And I was like, that's good. Like, you need to hustle. I said, how many people answered you? And he said 3. So, and I gave this guy probably like 5 hours, not like we did a few calls, not 5 hours at once, but we did a few calls back to back. And I thought it was so important. The fact that this guy reached out, he didn't give up when somebody didn't answer him back. He kept trying to reach out, and he ended up with a lot of good information, that it might have taken him a couple of years to learn. I'm sure he would have learned it eventually, because he seems like a very smart guy. But just that little kind of bump to learn it now instead of learning it 2 years from now can make a huge difference when you're looking to build a startup, or really in anything. If you're building your career or you're building a company, the earlier you can learn something, the better. And so I think just having that tenacity to reach out. I've had people that I know that reached out to, who you would consider like an A-list kind of person, like a Tony Robbins, and just sent cold messages. But you don't send it to one person and they don't answer, and then you're like, wow, I guess nobody wants to help me. You send it to a lot of people, and you'd be surprised. Like, there's a lot of people out there that will answer, and there are people that you think you'd never be able to get an audience with. So it's just getting over yourself, and then if it needs to be cold messages on LinkedIn, maybe you got to send 25 or 100 to get somebody to answer, but don't be afraid to do that.
Amazing. Now, last question on this topic. I mean, you have founded 3 companies and had 3 exits. So now you are in a place of your life that you're more helping others, right? What's the fulfillment to you of helping others? Besides the giving back, that you feel responsible because you were helped in the beginning, what are the other fulfillments that brings to you? Because I know you're building a business now, right? That is all about adding value, right? So why that matters to you?
So I was having a conversation with someone today. I don't know if she's on. I think she might be on the call. I was talking to Karen today, and I was talking about people who kind of have been in my position, but they do it more as a job. And I was surprised to hear, like, once that job because obviously, like, I worked at WeWork for a while, and working at WeWork, I got to meet a lot of great entrepreneurs, and I was supporting them. And then WeWork sort of closed down the program here in Miami. And of course, like, I stayed in touch with as many people from there as possible. And the question as to why is, like, I was surprised that not everybody stayed in touch with the people they work with, because now they're like friends to me. They're like friends, they're like family. They're the people that when something goes good or something goes bad or something's interesting, like, I want to share it with them. Right. And I post it in our group and we chat. And I think so what I get out of it really is, like, friendships with really amazing entrepreneurs. Just because I might be helping them with something doesn't mean that I necessarily know more than them, or I'm more experienced with them, or I'm better than them in any way. I just happen to know this little part of life, and I've done this before, and I can help them. But then there's so much that I get back from being able to talk to these people, that I can't even like, again, that young guy who's still in college, like, I gained a lot of value from talking to him. So it wasn't like I was just helping him and I'm like this patron saint of mentorship. Like, I gave him some information, but I also learned from him. So I think as a mentor, by sharing your time and by helping people with the thing that you get a lot of really good value from those people. Again, if you're open to those different perspectives on life, I think you get a lot out of it. Beyond just giving back, you really build friendships, you build relationships, and hopefully they last for a long time.
That's amazing. Very special. And I mean, this might be a little bit off topic, but I'm curious. As an entrepreneur, what is the best way to structure a healthy relationship with a mentor, right? Or with an advisor, let's say.
Yeah, I think not everybody is going to mesh well, right? So I think in the beginning, it's kind of like dating in the beginning. Like, you've got to sort of feel it out. You've got to see if this person and you sort of vibe. I'm very big about, like, is there a connection there? So I think the first thing is, like, that first meeting is really just a discovery call to kind of introduce yourself, have them introduce themselves, tell them what you're looking for, kind of why you're reaching out. I think the more direct you can be, the better. So don't like beat around the bush with this long story. Say, hey, I'm reaching out to you because you have done this and I would like to learn this, right? And then they will probably tell you, okay, great, where are you coming from? What's your story, whatever. And then you go into that, like feeling each other out. But I think be direct, be very respectful of their time. If somebody says they have to leave, if they have to get off the call in 30 minutes, you set a timer and make sure that you get everything you need done in 30 minutes. Because if you get to 30 minutes and you haven't answered, they haven't answered your question because you haven't asked it or you went too long on something, that it kind of makes you look like you're a little bit disorganized maybe, or you're not focused. And I think that it's important to be focused. Like this has to be a deliberate effort. It's not just the things I almost never reply to is when people say, hey, let's go get coffee. I'm like, well, sure, I'd love to get coffee, but get coffee for what? Like I have a million meetings today, and as much as I want to meet with you, I'd really like to know what it is that you're looking for. So be direct, be specific about what you're looking for, and then be respectful of their time. Most people who are busy, who are busy doing things and who you want to be mentored from anyway, don't have a ton of time to just sit down and grab coffee without some sort of agenda.
For sure. Wow. Okay. Amazing. Thank you for answering that. A little bit off topic, but I think it was very valuable. So now let's shift to the topic of today, right? Which is how you are going to be volunteer in this call, in this interview, and hopefully inspire people to listen as well, right? What is the new normal for startups? We went through a complete transformation of how we live our lives, and I'm sure how we do business. How are the entrepreneurs being affected by this?
So I get this question a few times a week, and it's in some regards it's the same, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you realize like things are always changing, markets are always shifting. You're always sort of looking to see if you need to pivot. Hopefully you're doing these things anyway, right? So in this case, it's the same thing. You need to analyze the market. You need to see how it affects your business. Because it does it affects everybody's business in some ways for bad and some ways for good, right? So there's some people that maybe, I work with one founder, he's got a virtual education platform. They doubled overnight because everybody needed to go virtual and they were just perfectly positioned to facilitate that. And then other organizations I work with that are having to pivot because they were focused either in the restaurant industry or the entertainment industry, and those industries have been hit pretty hard. So I think in some sense it's the same because entrepreneurs are always looking to see if they need to pivot. But in this case, there are some benefits. So the benefits, one is that you can find talent, and also it's a lot more normal for talent to work from home. You don't have to train them to work from home. You can get that assistance. And then it's really just understanding how the market has affected you and how you can, I don't want to say take advantage of the situation because obviously it's a very difficult time for a lot of people. But in every difficult time and in every moment like this, in these chaotic moments, there is opportunity, and that opportunity is out there. And I think as an entrepreneur, you can either get worried and frozen and say, look, there's so much going on, I don't know what to do. Or you kind of pick yourself up and you say, okay, there's so much going on, let me find what's next for my industry. But there's no magic bullet. There's no answer for everyone. It's really just being open and nimble to change and then figuring out what that change is for your business.
Amazing. And has funding been affected by startups now? Or how do you see that world going?
Yeah. Funding is one of the areas that is unfortunately very different now, right? So, funding hasn't stopped, but it's either a lot of people who were looking at raising capital, they've had their VCs or their angels tell them they've paused it for a while and they're waiting. So there is a little bit of a slowdown on the capital side. But again, I think this is the opportunity for every organization to see if there's a pivot that needs to happen, and then see what validation you can do during this time. Because again, this is not a temporary scenario. This is a scenario that's going to last a long time, but the funding shortage is temporary, right? So maybe it's on pause, maybe it's been on pause for 2 or 3 months, and that does feel like a big deal. And if your plan was to raise money in 3 months, that can be devastating. But at the same time, you should be organized. I don't say you should be. You shouldn't be in a position. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you need to raise capital in 3 months, or else you're going to go out of business, right? Never. You should never find yourself in that scenario, because you've got to plan a little bit better, because something can always go wrong. You could be like 1 day away from the papers being signed on $1 million, funding round, and then something happens. I had this is like a true story. I worked with a founder that had his whole round of funding covered by one investor. He was putting in I think it was like a 3.5 or $2.5 million round, and the investor passed away. And then all the paperwork was done, but he hadn't signed it yet. And the money went to a family trust, and the family trust said, we have no interest in funding this startup. And luckily he had other options, but if that would have been his only option, if somebody tells me I'm going to give you $2.5 million, it's easy to kind of okay, let me go back to work because I have the funding already taken care of. But in whatever scenario you're in, you cannot rely on that as an early or young company. You have to constantly be weighing your options, and part of what we do is having enough options so that we can. There's this resiliency that is prevalent in almost every successful entrepreneur, that it's this fails, this fails, this fails, and this fails. That's fine. I'm going to keep moving forward, and I have an answer for this, right? It's not always easy. Being an entrepreneur can be an incredibly stressful, difficult time. I'm pretty sure that my hairline was lower before. But that's part of what you sign up for. If you want stability, I suppose you could, get a job at Microsoft or something. My best friend works for Microsoft, so that's a dig at him.
Got it. So, you were involved in a community, right, at WeWork, and I remember, I was part of it for a couple of months and went there a couple of times. I remember it was an amazing energy, right, to be able to share best practices with entrepreneurs and to learn from each other. How is that now, right, that basically everybody's virtual? People can find virtual communities. What do they go to find not only mentorship, but also friendship, that people are on the same level?
Yeah, it's another conversation I actually had with 3 different people today specifically, right? It's how do you do community without physical connection? Right. There's so many events out there. There's tons of virtual happy hours. There's tons of virtual things, whether it's happy hours, whether it's stand-ups, whether it's just meet and greets. And those are great. I think those are great places to meet people. But what I find is that if you can find a group that meets consistently, so whether that's, and I think it has to be more than monthly, it's got to be at least every week or every 2 weeks. A group that I have right now that works particularly well is a boot camp, and we meet twice a week. And it's only been going on for 6 weeks, but it really feels like I know a lot of these people, and they're starting to meet each other. And so I think consistency is the key, that frequency, and ideally frequency within the same group, right? If you're going to a different event, if you're going to the same event every month, but it's all different people every time, you're not ever really going to have a chance to connect with those people. You've got to, what I found in WeWork was, people meet for the first time and there's this trepidation. Maybe you kind of say hi to some people. And then the second time, there's a little bit more familiarity. And then the third time, okay, people are starting to recognize faces. But it takes a good, if you're talking about meeting in person, it's 3 months of kind of passing by each other in the office and being forced to go to events together. That's what a lot of what I did in WeWork was forcing people, hey, we're getting together. You need to come, get out of your office for a minute. And meet with these people. But eventually, after about 3 months, they were all just meeting with each other individually because they realized they have synergies. And online, I found that can actually happen faster. So it doesn't take 3 months, but it does require that consistency of either weekly or twice a week to make that happen. And what I would recommend is maybe find or start you can call it a mastermind group. Right? So maybe you identify 13 people that you think would kind of go together, or they match, or they would complement each other, and just pitch this idea. Hey guys, I'm launching this mastermind group. I'd love to have you guys join. And out of 13, maybe you'll get 7 or 8 But then the idea is like, look, we're committing to meet every week for the next 6 weeks. And if you put maybe an ideal or that you can all get behind, or a problem that you can all solve, I've seen that be successful with keeping people together. And it's something to try, because I found that if you can keep that group together for 4 or 6 weeks and you're meeting regularly, it does start to become a really important part of your journey.
That's amazing. I did something similar. I started actually a book reading with some people, and each one of us were sharing like what we're going through as we're reading the book. It was like amazing. We won now. It's like almost like 15 people or so, like, I don't know, something like that. And we're meeting every week, and like we feel like friends. It's like unbelievable. It's like super.
Books are an amazing way to organize that. Whether it's a group that's in business and you pick a business book, or a group that's in fiction and you pick that, like, it's an amazing way to get everyone together.
So tell me a little bit about your new venture, right? You're trying to create now a new community, and I don't know if it's going to be online or if it's going to be physical, but in the times that we're going through, how do you see, starting a business, because you're starting a business, and what's that's going to look like? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the new company is called Navigate. We haven't actually officially launched yet, but we do have 6 companies in our pilot. And what we do is, for right now, it's virtual, but we do have a physical location. So we're working with Lab Miami. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're like one of the first startup environments, one of the first co-working spaces here in Miami. So we've got a physical space, but the program is a combination of physical and virtual. So if you're in Miami, you're welcome to come here and we can meet in person. But for the most part, everybody meets virtually, and not all the companies are even in Miami. So we get to have a bigger reach. But it's really an incubator that is designed to get early stage. It's by invitation or by application. So you've got to really be a fit for the program, which I won't go into all the details here. Sure. But it basically is designed to get you from whatever stage you're at. So you might be pre-product, you might be post-product but pre-launch, you might be you post-launch, but maybe you haven't validated your idea quite yet, and you're working through that. And wherever you are, you kind of slide into that programming level, and we get very hands-on and help you with whatever you need to get to that next step. And it's very much focused on driving you through the steps so that you can either the idea is that you can be prepared to get funding. Whether funding is your goal or not, really being prepared for funding is largely the same that it's going to take to be prepared for doing a big business development deal or closing a big client. So putting all those steps in place to get you funded is where we focus. And it's valid whether you are actively looking for funding or not.
Amazing. Very cool. I'm excited to see how it's going to look like, and hopefully apply and join. But if you were to send a message to the people now, to the entrepreneurs now in the world with this new normal, what would you leave for them as your final statement?
A message for entrepreneurs in the new normal. Gosh, that's a tough one. So I think, there's so much education out there. There's a book called Anti-Fragile, which is really timely for this moment. And it's about building, not just resiliency, not just companies that can survive if things go wrong, right? But the concept of anti-fragility is building a company that's actually going to do better. Like, it's positioned to do better when things go wrong. And it sounds like a crazy way to plan, because you're like, well, if things are going wrong, how can I do better? But there are ways to organize that. And I think being able to educate yourself on how to build an anti-fragile type of organization, and then just really embracing the parts of what makes startups, is that being nimble and being able to change quickly and being able to pivot quickly. And I think startups are also really good at building relationships, right? I think when startups are done well, your customers have a closer relationship with you, right? Like you may be like, for example, right? If you buy a copy of Windows, you're not going to get an email from the CEO of Microsoft thanking you for buying a copy of Windows and telling you to email him whenever you want. right? But as a startup, we can do that. Right? Everybody who buys a copy of our product, they can get a personal email from the CEO, and you can and I tell people to do this all the time, like say like, hey, this is my personal email. Don't send it from a no reply. If you're making less than $10 million a year, none of your emails should be going from a no reply email address, right? It should all be coming from a real person, and if they reply, you see it, or somebody that's important on your team sees it. And you have that communication. I think being able to embrace that in this moment is going to create relationships that, again, once we exit this time, right, and we go back to whatever, we're saying the new normal, right? So as we continue in this new normal, having those relationships that you can build personally is going to create such an incredible organization for you, so that if you do need to change, or when you're always going to need to change, so when things do change, your customers aren't committed to this particular product or this particular thing that you're selling. They're committed to you, and they're committed to your brand, and they're committed to the fact that your brand exists to help them in whatever that may be. So I think embracing that personal connection, and then learning to make an organization that thrives on difficulty is really the best way to go for now.
Amazing. They got resiliency, flexibility, and relationships. And I think to add to that, I think something that has helped me, and I think that I've talked to different people, is also important to have in your mindset like the mantra, right? Add value. How can I add value today? How can I add value today, right? And not only add value to you, to your customer, but also to the community, right? To think about how can you extend your hand and help out, like you mentioned that you've been doing it so much. I think that it creates, it even intensifies, right, the whole concept of relationships that you mentioned, right? Not only as a way for you to look good, which I don't think should be the intention, but as a way to really be of service for people. As you learn to be of service for people, I think you learn how to be a service for your clients, right, for your employees, and I think that's huge. And that's all what we're all about, right? ShareNets is all about sharing, all about giving back. So if anybody is out there and got inspired by what Pedro shared, the idea of this interview, right? It's not only that you guys now learn the new normal for startups, and obviously we're able to connect to a 3-time founder, an amazing mentor for startups, but most important that you guys get inspired to also do good, to find your unique talent in your unique area of business, on your unique community, and raise your hand and say, I'm here to help out. And I guarantee that not only that's going to bring value to your community, but also to yourself. And I think like that will be able to come out of this pandemic as better people, as better communities, as better entrepreneurs, as better society. So Pedro, really, thank you so much for your time, for your talent, for your wisdom. And hopefully we'll see each other soon. I hope to know more about what you're doing in your business, but regardless of any of that, really appreciate your time and your moment.
Awesome. And if anybody has business questions or startup questions, feel free to reach out.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks.